Next, we're going to look at some examples that involve solving for a variable. So to solve for a variable, use the exact same properties that you did before when there were numbers involved, except for this time there are only variables. So let's say I was asked to solve for the variable r. That simply means to get r by itself. Just like with a normal equation, you're typically solving for x. That means get x by itself. If I'm solving for r, in let's say this equation, that means try to get that r by itself. So right now it's with a q on the same, we want r by itself on the same side of the equal sign. So it's qr, that means there's multiplication going on there. So this is q times r. And I don't want that q there anymore. Since this is multiplication, I need to undo it with division. So I'm going to, in order to get rid of the q, I need to divide both sides by q. Now what happens, I've got q over q. Anything divided by itself simplifies to 1. So this is really just like 1 times r. So the q's are actually going to cancel out. And then I'm left with p over q. And since they're just variables, there's really nothing for me to simplify, because it's not like I don't know what those numbers actually are, so I'm just going to leave it as p over q. So my answer would be p over q equals r. And now I've solved for r. R is by itself on one side of the equal sign. All right, let's try the next one. Again, I want to solve for r. So here's r. It is not by itself yet. It's still with this p. So right now, p is being added to the r. So to undo that addition, I need to subtract. I need to get rid of that p, so I need to just subtract p from both sides. P minus p, gone. That's 0. So what I'm left with is r, I'm going to continue over here, r equals q minus p. So I'm just going to write that as q minus p. And I'm done. I've solved for r. R is now by itself. These are equivalent equations, just in different forms. Part C, I again need to solve for r. So I need to get that r by itself. Right now I've got r divided by q. So to undo division, I need to use multiplication, my multiplication property of equality. So I need to multiply both sides by something. Well, to get rid of the q, to undo division by q, I need to multiply both sides by q. I like to use parentheses. You might use the little dot signifying multiplication. Either one means the same thing. So r divided by q times q, those q's are actually going to cancel out. And I'm just left with the r. So what I'm left with is q times p equals r. And let's just look a little bit closer at what we did here. So you don't necessarily have to write this part down, but r divided by q times q. Well, q, you can put anything over 1. So it's kind of like I did that, q over 1. And you know how to, you can always cross cancel when you multiply two fractions. So q, those would cross cancel out. So what I'm left with is just r over 1. R over 1 is the same thing as just r, which is what we got. Okay, so I have q times p equals r. I've solved for r, and I'm done.